It's 19:06 GMT. This is Focus on Africa from the BBC World Service. I'm Audrey Brown. And we go to Sierra Leone for that story that you've just been hearing in the news. It passed a landmark ruling to increase women's fuller participation in the politics and economy of the country. There were jubilant scenes after President Julius Maada Bio signed the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Act into law.
We sing our song for justice and development and for the rights of all the people.
The law stipulates mandatory quotas which will reserve at least 30% of all jobs at all levels for women. Our correspondent Umaru Fofana has been telling me more.
It does sound like music to the ears of women in Sierra Leone, as they themselves have been saying here since this thing went through Parliament, albeit they believe that some of it was watered down. Now, with effect from today, among other things, 30% of government and private sector jobs are protected for women to ensure that the law is not circumvented, turning it into some form of like a tokenistic gesture by giving women lowly jobs. The law also says that 30% of senior jobs at the decision-making level in both the private and public sectors should also be ring-fenced for women. Women will now have also a 14-week-long maternity leave, which currently stands at 12 weeks. Now, but the clause for a mandatory 30% safe parliamentary seats for women was expunged by Parliament. However, if the proportional representation electoral system is upheld, which is currently being challenged by the opposition before the country's highest court, political parties should have a woman after every 2 men on the list of potential legislators. So generally, women here feel this is really a watershed moment for them.
Well, I'm hoping that it's music to the ears of men as well who actually do want equality. So what are the penalties if, these quotas are not fulfilled? Because if they're mandatory, it means that nobody can wriggle out of them.
Nobody can wriggle out of them. There is a $2,500 fine in the case of financial benefits given to, financial entitlements given to women in terms of either securing loans from banks or some other areas. I'm not particularly clear about the penalties in case the quota system is disregarded, but it has to be said that currently only 5 of the 29 cabinet ministers in Sierra Leone are women, and just about 12% of members of parliament are women. So implementing this will be very key, and hopefully we should be able to hear from the president later on this evening to be sure as to how he thinks this is going to be implemented. But it is law, and women should be free to go to court should they feel the need that they are being trampled upon.
But you have also been reporting, haven't you, about the ways in which women are still disadvantaged and the ways in which women are still not regarded as equal. Umaru, tell us a little bit about it and introduce the package that you made for us.
Well, yes, absolutely. Rape, battering of women, sexual harassment, these are really widespread in Sierra Leone, as virtually everyone here alludes to. The figures coming out are really very startling, especially the sexual harassment of women in learning institutions. That is a tough Sexual Offences Act in Sierra Leone, and an even tougher provision against rape. And a special court has been set up to deal with those offences, yet they persist. Recently, the Milton Magai Technical University sacked some lecturers, a rarity in terms of action in this country. So I've been finding out about how that went at the Milton Magai Technical University.
If you say that me you the staying or na me you the life now you get from me.
A lecturer at the Milton Magai Technical University apparently soliciting sex from a female student in this telephone call. With a sense of entitlement, he threatens her for evading his earlier advances, warning that if she does not comply with him this time, no one can save her.
So the other day back, he called me. 3 times, he called me.
The student, Rahimatu, says the lecturer persistently harassed her, but that she did not budge. Therefore, he allegedly tried to frame her up during a written test. This and other sexual harassment allegations reached the Vice-Chancellor of the university, Professor Philip Kano, who took up the matter. The university court was brought in. They set up a committee which opened up a can of worms, talking to several lecturers, witnesses and alleged victims, as well as going through verifiable audio and video materials. The committee found a system unable and unwilling to protect female students. Elizabeth Sise is the public relations officer of the university.
It's really pathetic. It's endemic now in the institution, Some of these students are like 20, 21 years, and when you have lecturers, they approach you with those sort of things, and they get afraid because these are some of the testimonies that the students, some of them will tell that they were afraid, some of them have suffered consequences when they refuse, the lecturer will fail them. You know, most of them don't have the courage to think like to go to the administration, the senior, because they will think that this is something that it will only fall on me, because that is what most time they threaten them with. That if you expose it to other people, you will only have yourself to blame. We have the power. There is no one that can question us. When most of these lecturers sexually harass the students, some of them it's not just one, you know, maybe it's 2, 3 lecturers.
The report of the investigations obtained by the BBC is startling and shows how sextortion runs deep. A dean of a faculty admits to sexual harassment allegations leveled against him and some members of his faculty by various female students. One of the students is Aminata Hassan Kamara.
The lecturer told me that he wants me, and I said, no, please, sir, take me as your daughter. And he said, no, you have so many daughters, so he only wants me to have sex. And he said if I fail to do that, he will fail me.
The university has waived off the fees of the victims for the rest of their courses and put them through counseling. Women's rights groups have welcomed the sacking of the lecturers, but they also want criminal charges pressed against them. Aisha Fofana Ibrahim is a professor of gender studies at the University of Sierra Leone and a senior member of the gender parity group 50/50.
The fact that somebody or the leader took that position and first of all investigated and then acted upon the findings of the investigation, I think is very commendable. What he has done will send a message about the pervasive and normalized nature of sexual harassment in Sierra Leone. But I think they should have that day in court. I mean, it's a criminal offense, isn't it? And these women should not have justice and reparation as well.
And how widespread do you think is the sexual harassment of female students in learning institutions in Sierra Leone?
Oh, it's very pervasive. It's everywhere. And there are no mechanisms in place to deal with this issue. For me, that's the problem.
A report on sextortion in academic institutions by the Center for Accountability and Rule of Law, published 5 years ago, shows that 56% of female students in universities across the country have experienced sexual harassment. Many believe that number is much higher now. Female students get lost when they face predatory lecturers, often not knowing what to do or where to go.
And that was our correspondent in Freetown, Umaru Fofana. You're listening to Focus on Africa on the BBC World Service.